So I need you to change the way you see yourself in this moment. Because if you change the way you see yourself, you very well may change your world. So I need you to stop being afraid of your strengths. I need you to stop being afraid of your questions. I need you to fear not and dare to be all you were created to be. Because God's dream for you is the enemy's nightmare. I'm going to be preaching to you tonight about being dangerous and fully awake. But to take you forward with this, I'm going to have to take you back 17 years. And before you would stand a very different woman than the one who stands before you right now. She would be overwhelmed. She would be anxious. She would be so shy that her husband would have to sit her down and say, baby, everybody thinks you're stuck up because you don't talk to everybody. I don't know why he thought that would cure me of the fear of everybody else. It had the very opposite effect. I was overwhelmed. I was just like, oh my gosh, everybody's watching me. Everybody hates me. Everybody thinks I'm stuck up. They don't know I'm terrified. I also was exhausted in that season. I had 3 young children and I was pregnant with my 4th. I got up every day just living to put my children back to bed again. I remember they would get up and I would say, how long before it's nap time again? Then I would get them up from nap time and I'd be like, how soon can I put them to bed? I remember in that season, I remember one of my boys, I would pray for all of them, be really sweet Christian mom, and I would start heading down the stairs just hoping that they would all stay in their beds. Please just stay in your beds, please don't move anything. And I remember one of my sons saying, you forgot to pray for me, which always started a chain reaction of all the other ones saying, you didn't pray for me, I don't think you, and I said, I prayed for all of you, I'm not coming up there again, I made it again on your bed. And I thought, oh my gosh, what kind of mother am I? I am yelling at my children when they're asking me to pray for them. I was just surviving. Every night I worked on my husband's book from 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. in the morning that would later be known as the bait of Satan. I was exhausted and I was something else I'm not right now. I was pregnant. Thank God I am not pregnant. A lot of women are cute when they're pregnant. I've seen a couple since I've been here. I believed in a 50-pound minimum weight gain. I don't know what that is in kilograms. It could be like 20. I believed in a big amount of weight gain for a good baby. So I was not a cute, small, pregnant woman. I was a large, waddling, pregnant woman. And that is what my world looked like when I tumbled into bed one night and I found myself suddenly, vividly awake in the midst of a night vision that threatened to interrupt all that I had known as safe and small. I found myself standing in front of a magnificent lioness. She was laying on her side on top of a platform of stone. On the front of the platform was the word numbers and then the Roman numerals XX3 or 23. I remember the lioness never moved, but I knew she was more alive than I was. You know, it was in that moment that I realized that everything in heaven is a prototype. It is the pattern. And here is but shadow. I stood and I looked at this lioness, and I don't know if you've ever stood in front of something that just inspires you, but I actually felt like something inside of me was beginning to enlarge, beginning to expand. And when I felt like I couldn't take anymore, I heard a voice behind me say, with the birth of this son, you will awaken a lioness. I began to shake and come fully awake, immersed in the presence of God, laying in my bed thinking, what the heck was that? Now I need to explain a couple things to you. First of all, I don't wake fully in the morning. Last year, I had the privilege of doing all of the Color Your World conferences. We did 2 in Sydney, then we did 1 in Kiev, and we did 1 in London. And at the end of the very last one in London, I tumbled out of bed. I headed across the street to that Starbucks that I believed God had put there just for me. And usually I was the first person there at 6:30 a.m., but somehow that morning someone had got in front of me in line, and I was okay with that because I recognized this person as Judah Smith's mother. I said, "Good morning, Jenny." And she turned and she looked at me, and then she looked at me. And that was when I realized that I had toothpaste all over my face. Yes, I had read that if you dotted your blemishes with toothpaste, it would dry it out overnight. And I had taken Triple Fresh Aqua Fresh, which is blue, red, and white swirls, and I had put it all over my face, let it dry overnight. I had that sick feeling, and I looked at her, and she looked at me, and I said, "I have toothpaste on my face, don't I?" And she said, "Yes, you do." I do not wake fully, nor do I wake immersed in the presence of God. Normally I wake thinking, where am I? But that particular day, presence of God laid there, and when I felt like I could actually move, because have you ever had those moments where the presence of God is so rich you just don't even want to move, but you're kind of scared you're going to die, so you just kind of like lay there? So when I felt like I could move my hand out and grab my Bible, I pulled it into bed with me, and I opened it up to Numbers 23, verse 24. I think they're going to put it up there. And this is what I read. I read, "The people rise like a lioness. They rouse themselves like a lion that does not rest till it devours its prey and drinks the blood of the slaughtered." Now, of its victims. Sorry, that's 2 different versions mixed. Okay, now I was beyond challenged by that. I mean, I am almost a vegetarian. When we watch National Geographic, I'm praying for the zebras. John's like, "Look at those lions." I'm like, "Run, zebras, run." And now all of a sudden, I'm like reading about devouring prey and drinking blood of victims. I'm like, what in the world does this have to do with me? But you know what? I did give birth to a son, and I named him Arden Christopher. Arden means fiery and determined, and Christopher means anointed one. And with the birth of Arden, my world began to open up. I literally wrote my first book while I was breastfeeding him because he would not detach. I propped up pillows underneath him, typed over the top of him, "Do not tell me that you cannot obey God. We all have the same 24 hours in a day." I found out that my world began to open up because of my books. I got invited to speak places, and I actually would just say no. And my husband would say, "Well, do you want to pray about that?" And I would say no. And he'd say, "Why not?" I said, "Because if I pray, God might tell me to go. And so I'm not going to pray, and then I'm just in ignorance and not in disobedience." And John would be like, "No, that doesn't work." But anyway, your gift will make room for you. You give it first, and then it makes room for you. And I found myself actually in 2007 here in New Zealand. And I was kind of like, okay, my world's opened up. I was speaking at Marie's conference with Darlene Check and Bobby, and I was kind of like, okay, I'm not quite such a coward as I used to be. I'm kind of a lioness. And I was getting ready to preach before the second sessions when the Holy Spirit brought back before me the lioness. And he said to me, "I said, with the birth of your son, you would awaken a lioness. Not that you were a lioness." He said, "Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah, and it is time his bride awaken a lioness." And so for 2 years, I studied the lioness. And let me tell you, just as there is no creature that makes a man prouder to be male than the lion, there is no creature that makes me prouder to be a female than the lioness. They hunt together. They're strategic. They greet and groom one another. They don't think what looks bad on you makes me look good. They understand that if you look bad, that means I'm not doing my job. They know their strength is for service. They conceive and give birth together because they nurse and train one another's young. They live in the light, but they hunt in the dark. And each lioness understands she has one talent or one skill that she hones for the benefit of all. It is something called prowess. Now, this is how random I am. After the book was already out, driving in my car, I prayed for a confirmation. I was like, God, was I supposed to write that as a book or just preach it as a message? I would really love a confirmation on that. Well, that night, I was in the throes of a school project, and I don't know if Wellington can appreciate what that looks like in Colorado, but that is when it's like 8 o'clock at night, and one of your sons says, oh, Mom, by the way, I have a school project due tomorrow. And you go downstairs in your basement and you tear apart your other children's school projects and you bring back up the poster board, but your son says, no, that's not the right kind. I need a different kind. So then you go out braving a blizzard to a store to get the right kind of poster board. Before you leave, you pay your other children money to cut out pictures for your son's projects. It's all out on the kitchen table when your husband calls. And John, you know, he has this kind of cute, I've just learned after 30 years of marriage, you just need to call the annoying things cute, because they're not going to stop. So I'm just going to say it's a cute habit of calling me and putting me on the phone with random strangers. People I will never meet. People that never even want to meet me. I don't know if he just needs an out of a conversation. And he's like, here's my wife. But anyway, he puts me on the phone with people. He's on the East Coast. He's calling me. He's like, Lisa, I have somebody you want to talk to. I said, no, John, I don't want to talk to anybody. I am in the throes of a school project. And he said, no, you're going to want to talk to this person. I said, no. And then I heard a stranger's voice. And I heard, is this Lisa? And I'm like, yes. And he said, this is Major. And then he gave me his rank and his name in the Army. And I was like, am I in trouble? And he said, no. He said, your husband held up your book, Lioness Arising. And he said that the lion is the best killer, but the lioness is the height of hunting prowess. And I said, yeah, that's what he would say, because that's all he knows, because he hasn't read the book. And he said, well, I'm calling you to tell you why your book is important. He said, do you know we are not winning the war in Afghanistan? And I said, yeah, you know, I understand that. And he said, do you want to know why we are not winning the war? I said, sure. He said, it's because we can't speak to the Afghan women. And he said, when you can't speak to the women, you can't flip the culture. And when you can't flip the culture, you can't win the war. He said, up until this point, we have been sending special operative men into the Afghan culture because it's too dangerous for women. He said, but let me tell you what I do here at Fort Bragg. He said, I train special operative women. He said, we're getting ready to send in a team. He said, here will be their jobs. They're going to go in and tell the Afghan women that they have voice and value. They're going to tell them why democracy will serve their sons and daughters better. They're going to take care of their minor medical needs, and they're going to help deliver their babies. And he said, I need to tell you the name of this group. It's called Team Lioness. They're about ready to be deployed. May I have a copy of your book for all of them? I just about fainted. You know what? I don't know if you know what is on the other side of your obedience. Being tranquilized by the ordinary and the everyday. I'm talking about being busy about what is unimportant. I'm talking about from my own life, tri-folding my children's underwear and bleaching the grout with a toothbrush. And God saying to me, I really don't care about your grout. Lisa, are you going to obey me or not? I don't have time to obey you, God. And then all of a sudden I was in a car wreck and I got whiplash and I could no longer bleach the grout. And then God was like, now, do I have your attention? We have a cleaning lady coming in. I'm not saying that he made me have the car wreck, but it certainly used it to get my attention. And you know what? We have to decide what our priorities are going to be. And the truth is, your children don't care that you tri-fold their underwear. You do better just to put a basket in their closet. But God cares about you being fulfilled. And if you are a happy woman, and if you are there for your children, and you have purpose in your life, you're going to model something better than tri-folding underwear. Sorry, somebody needed to hear that. Okay, anyway. I thought, is the church dangerous and fully awake? Are we incapacitated and talking in our sleep, aware of what is going on? We're upset about it, but somehow we just can't find our feet. You know, this is not the first time that God asks us to look at creation and learn. Proverbs 6:6 says, you lazy fool. And that's not me talking, that's God. You lazy fool, look at an ant, watch it closely, let it teach you a thing or two. Nobody has to tell it what to do. All summer it stores up food. At harvest it stockpiles provisions. So how long are you going to laze around doing nothing? How long before you get out of bed? See, I don't think God is asking us to look at the lions and learn the same thing. I think he's saying, hey, timid, frightened daughters, look at the lioness and learn. She knows who she is. She knows whose she is. And she knows what she is capable of doing. And she hones her skills to honor her Creator. I love what God is beginning to do in the church. He is beginning to wake up his people. See, I really believe that the lioness I saw was a revelation of what God's people need to look like. At ease with their strength and at rest with their power. People who do not strive with one another. Sisters who do not strive with one another. Sisters who work with one another. Sisters who do not strive with their brothers. We need to begin to work with one another. The lionesses hoe the land. The lion lets them rest in his shadow. He deals with the harassment. While I was studying all of this, I got to have the most amazing privilege of going on a safari. I did not think I would like going to bed at 8 o'clock at night and being woke up at 4 a.m. But it was actually my most favorite thing I've ever done in my life. And all 3 days, we followed this one mama lioness and her 3 cubs. And I am a little strange that if I've studied something long enough, I think because I know about it, it knows me. And so on the 3rd day, the mama lioness and her 3 cubs came up on my side of the vehicle. The cubs went first, and then the mama was right there. And I just kind of felt like she had come to say, goodbye, Lisa. And so I very slowly, reached my hand out of the vehicle. I let her head go by. I let her shoulders go by. And I was just getting ready to brush her lower back with my hands ever so gently when John Bevere said, absolutely not. And so I pulled my hand back into the vehicle, and I had to imagine the conversation I would have had with the lioness if John would not have interrupted it. I believe I would have pet her gently, and she would have flipped around, and then she would have realized it was me. And she would have said, Lisa! And I would have said, lioness! And then I'd be overwhelmed that I was having a face-to-face conversation with a lioness, and I would just blurt out, you are stunning! And she would say to me, I know. Then she would sit down and she'd say, do you want to see what I can do? I'd be like, girl, show me. She'd release her claws. And she'd say, with these claws, I can take down an impala. and feed the entire pride. Then she'd retract them, and she'd show me a paw of velvet. And she'd say, with this paw, I tenderly nurture and raise up the young male and female to be mighty. Then she'd say, do you want to see what else I can do? And before I could answer her, I think John would interrupt. And he would say, I want to see. And she would bare her teeth. And she'd say, with these teeth, I hunt, I kill, and I defend. But with these same teeth, I move the young from one place to another without ever harming them. Then she'd stretch out to take a 20-hour nap. But before she closed her eyes, she would say to me, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And you know what? You clap because you have no problem seeing the lioness as the sum of fear and wonder. But that is not who that scripture is talking about. It is not talking about noble creatures. It is talking about the sons and the daughters of the Most High God. See, a lioness's or lion's attractiveness is undeniable because their power is unquestionable. And they know that their magnificence is captured in what they are created to do. And I am so ready for this to be said of the church, that the church is stunning in both form and function. See, you probably saw in the picture that some of my boys look like John. But the truth is, each and every one of us have a reflection of our Father. And denying and diminishing that assignment on our life is not modesty. It is a slap in his face. You know, my grandson Asher claps for himself. We're not even sure what he's done. And he will stand in the middle of the floor and just burst into clapping. And we're all like, okay, he must have done something amazing. We all have to clap. And he will clap until we all clap. And then we all clap. And he's just like, yeah, that's right. I'm amazing. When my boys were young, I would, ask them. I'd be like, okay, you guys were at school. Did anybody tell you that you were delicious today? They're like, Mom, that's just weird. Nobody tells us that we have taste except for you. And I'm like, no, you're awesome. You're beautiful. You're stunning. I remember the first time my sons began to argue with me about that. I didn't think they were modest. I knew that something had come in and distorted their imagery. When my children deny their strength, their talents, their potential, my love for them, it's not a compliment to me. It affronts me. I have 3 boys at home still, but I'm going to be honest with you. They all love to look at themselves in the mirror. I know you think that only girls do that, but the truth is boys do it, they just do it differently. They do it disrobed. When my boys come in, it's the truth. When my boys come in from the gym, the first thing to go is their shirts. Their shirts go flying off, and then they begin to flex. And it isn't enough to flex in the kitchen. The flexing has to go from the kitchen into the family room. It travels with me into the bedroom. And then they're in the master bathroom where they can see just how magnificent their flexing is. They will have me count how many packs they have. And if I don't count wrong, I'm like, count again. Like flexing, I'm like, okay, 8, no, there's 10. I'm like, seriously, I don't even think that's physically possible. They are flexing all the time in the mirror. They are celebrating their growth. You must remember, it's always Satan that will tell you that you are less than. Psalm 139, verses 14, in the Message, I believe David was flexing. He says, I thank you hi God, you're breathtaking, because body and soul, I'm marvelously made. I worship in adoration. What a creation. Okay, I'm serious. I see this played out every day. My husband even does this to me. He'll be like, honey, did you ever think that your husband would look this good at 52? I'm like, wow. You know, no, when I was 12, I wasn't thinking, what is my husband gonna look like at 52? He's like, honey. And I'm like, seriously, loves flexing. I believe that we're supposed to look into the mirror, but not in our bathroom mirror. We're supposed to look into the mirror of the Word. And we're supposed to marvel at how awesome God is, and how breathtaking He is, and how marvelously made we are because of what He says that we are capable of. And that we individually begin to honor our strengths by honing them, honor our God by sharing them, and then when we collectively come together, the church looks stunning. And God has us on the very threshold of this revelation of the Lion of the tribe of Judah. God only talks about Himself in terms of three creatures: the lamb slain before the foundations of the earth, the eagle who brings you out in deliverance to bring you to Himself, and then in the book of Revelations, the lion. And I believe that we are on the verge of His justice and His majesty and His sovereignty, and it is time we begin to reflect that on earth. I believe, like the lioness, the church needs to be a collection of contradictions: powerful, focused, nurturing, highly skilled, playful, and when necessary, deadly. Not to one another, but to the enemy. So I have a question for you. Who is at risk if you are tranquilized? Is it your husband? Is it your children? Is it your neighbors? Is it your church? Is it your community? Because I need you to be dangerous and fully awake.